number that about 60% of Americans think that there ought to be more than two parties is actually pretty consistent with a number of other polls that have been taken over the last several years. That seems a little high, given that we're in an election year and people usually tend to gravitate towards the two parties in an election year. But it's consistent with a general trend that Americans would really prefer to have more than just the same old two choices. And that makes sense because the two parties don't actually do a great job of representing a lot of Americans. I think there's a few things going on here that kind of reconcile Americans' dissatisfaction with the two-party system and the extensive hyper-partisanship of our politics. One is that a lot of Americans actually really don't like this intense hyper-partisanship, and part of the rejection of the two-party system is a rejection of this intense hyper-partisanship. And Americans, want the government to do things to solve public problems. And there's a lot of folks who blame the fighting between the two parties for the fact that the government doesn't seem to accomplish anything that would improve people's lives. People are waiting right now for their stimulus checks and for some help from the government. And partisan fighting is preventing the government from responding to clear and present economic crisis that is affecting tens of billions of people's lives right now. The second way to understand those two things simultaneously is to understand that a lot of people, while they may vote for the Democratic Party or they may vote for the Republican Party, are not super enthusiastic about the candidates that those parties are putting forward, about the platforms and policies those two parties are putting forward. And this creates a real challenge for both the Democratic and the Republican Party because they have to figure out a way to appeal to a lot of voters who, while might prefer the Democratic or the Republican Party, are not super enthusiastic about doing that. Now, in our two-party system, there's a very easy way for the parties to do that, which is to say that the other party is an incredibly dangerous threat to America. So you watch the Democratic convention, there's not a whole lot of policy there. There's a lot about how Donald Trump is an existential threat to American democracy. Next week, you watch the Republican convention, there's even less policy there. The Republicans don't even put forward a platform. And there's speech after speech about how the Marxist radical Democrats secretly controlled by AOC and black militants are gonna, change the entire character of this country. As Mike Pence put it in his speech, whether America is gonna become America. And all that gins up the hyper-partisanship. So even though people aren't super enthusiastic always about the party that they continue to vote for, they know that if the other party gets in charge, it would be a disaster. The tragedy is that they are being misled because the other party isn't unified enough to actually do all that much once in government. I think it's super important to understand how weird the United States is, how almost every other advanced democracy has some form of proportional representation, some form of multi-party democracy. And there are a lot of countries that are thriving and doing quite well with this system. I also think it's important to just understand how dangerous this current binary hyperpartisanship is, because it is really driving us to view fellow Americans as dangerous, as threats, as the enemy. And in order to have a functioning democracy, you need to have a process in which both sides think that they're going to get a fair result, whether they win or lose. And we have a process that seems to be highly uncertain, and both sides are claiming that it is going to be illegitimate if they lose. And that is a very dangerous thing for a democracy. And it's really a function of our current binary two-party system.